This week on Three Questions with Corey Kareem.
This spoken word is a gift, and you can emanate life or death by the mere intention coming out of your lips. We can speak dreams into existence, creating a world united or divided, so you can choose to be the change or remain silent.
Clockwise, 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 clockwise. Never turn back. Only go clockwise. Never go back. Only go.
Now, before we get started with this beautiful conversation, please help a brother out and click on that follow button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Enjoy the conversation.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Three Questions with Corey Kareem, the podcast where we sit down with some amazing people who are doing some amazing things. And that's right. You guessed it. We ask them three questions, sometimes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I know. I read the comments. But rather than just focus on the wins of my guests, we tend to start the conversation around their failures and then expand from there. But more specifically, focus on the lessons that they learned from those individual experiences. So, with that being said, my guest today is an arts facilitator, spoken word artist, entrepreneur, and also the visionary founder of Rise Entertainment. This dynamic individual embodies the essence of intelligence and creativity as reflected in the acronym of his organization, Rise, reaching intelligent souls everywhere. In a groundbreaking achievement, he was appointed as the first Poet Laureate of Ontario in April 2021, solidifying his place in the literary world. His literary mastery extends beyond spoken word, as he is also a published author. His debut book, I Am Not My Struggles, love that title, by the way, captivates readers with its powerful and inspiring narrative. When he's not shaping minds through his artistry, he is a devoted father, cherishing moments with his daughter. And if you ever find yourself in the city of Toronto, you might just spot him in the company of the mayor, a testament to his influence and the impact within the community. So, without further ado, Randell Adjei, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
My guy. So, I know I shared a bit of an introduction there, but is there anything I missed? Anything you wanted to add to what I just shared there? Was that okay?
I think that was okay. The only thing is I'm an optimist. You know, you put me in a dark situation, somehow, some way, I'm going to find the light, even if it's just a glimmer, you know? But that's it.
I love it. So, Randell, let's jump right into this. I usually like to come out the gate swinging with my questions, with the big ones, with the hard ones. So, tell me about the most difficult moment you've ever experienced, or a challenging period that you had to overcome in either your professional career or personal life. Specifically, what happened? How'd you get through it? And what did you learn from it?
I would say the most challenging situation I've been through was probably my last year of high school. A lot of good things were going on. I just graduated. I was on my way to York University. Did a lot of amazing things. Went to India, you know, just really involved in my community, valedictorian, a lot of different things, you know. It was a great summer. But it was August 3rd, 2009. And me and a few friends went out to go celebrate and just celebrate, you know, Caravana, the upcoming school year. And I was attacked by about 40 guys. I was stabbed in my elbow. I got stabbed in my back. And, you know, in those moments, like I remember looking to the sky and like, yo, God, why me? What did I do to deserve this? You know? And I think it was the most challenging because it was a near death experience. You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes like death teaches us to appreciate life a little bit more. So
100%.
I didn't understand why it happened in that moment. And it's still, even though it happened about, 15 years ago, I would say right now it's still the most challenging situation just because of the magnitude of like losing my life, you know? I've been through a lot of challenges, but I don't know. I just see a lot of things as opportunities more than challenges. But that situation was really hard to get through because it took a long time to realize and see the blessings in it. You know, I'd say how I got through it was leaning into the pain, you know, trying not to see the pain or what happened to me as like something that I brought upon myself, but more so seeing it as like, you know, these guys who did what they did to me, they weren't too different from my friends that I was hanging out at the time. By using violence as a way to kind of deal with their issues. So if anything, it became like a blessing to me because what I realized were my brethren who were in the hood doing God knows what,
hood stuff,
not too different than these guys. And so it gave me an opportunity to see, you know what could I do to help my brethren? Like, I don't want my brethren to ever have to go in a situation, like feel like they have to go leave their house, knives, guns, whatever, and feel like they could do this. And I think that was probably like the best challenge, biggest and best challenge I've ever been through because it helped me start Rise.
Right. And so in that moment, you're already on this kind of positive trajectory in your life, right? And so I'm just curious to know the 40 guys that approached you during Caravana weekend, no affiliation, never saw them before, random. They just saw you in this like, what looked like easy money, like.
Bro, anybody could have got it that night. You know what I'm saying? Like they were just on a rampage, just going. Right. Anyone who was in their sight could have got it. And I think it was me and two other guys. You know, so it's three of us. So we were kind of vulnerable. I don't know who these guys are. Never met them. Found out who they were later. Had an opportunity to retaliate, but chose not to. But yeah, honestly, I think it was just so tough to think people could leave their houses thinking like, yo, this is what I'm going to do tonight. You know what I'm saying? Whoever's in my way is going to get it. But yeah, I didn't know who they were.
Right. No, that's wild. And, you know, you kind of take me back to kind of certain Caravana experiences. Fortunately, I've never personally experienced that. But I always ask myself, what would I do if I was in that particular situation? Because they always talk about fight or flight, right? And I'm Jamaican. Most people don't think I am, but I also say that there's only two things Jamaican about me: my confidence and my temper.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? My confidence and my temper. So I don't know what I would do in that particular situation, but I'm glad that it worked out for the best. Now, you mentioned that it inspired you to start Rise. How did that particular situation help you to start Rise, your foundation?
So the main thing came down to like my guys that night. I called them. They knew what happened. They heard what happened. They chose not to come, you know, for whatever reason. I wanted to go to the hospital. I wanted to go to the hospital. I needed a ride. They're like, nah, like, you know, there's another party you want to go to. All right, cool. Like, these are my guys, you know?
They sold you out for a party.
Yeah, like these are my guys. And I'm like, you know what? Nah, these are my guys. But at the same time, I felt for them because I knew what kind of traumas they were going through. I knew what hardships they were going through. One of them I've known since I was 10 years old, you know? So I feel like knowing what they've been through and me being like, out of all my brethren when we were growing up, I was the only guy that had my dad that lived in the house out of 10 of us. You know what I'm saying? So One out of 10. So I understood the traumas that they were carrying. But ultimately, I said to myself, if these are my guys, you know what I mean? And this is a long time ago. We're not close like we used to be. But it made me think like, if these guys left our houses with knives and guns, just ready to rob anybody at random, knowing that my guys at the time would also do the same thing, I just felt this sense of empathy. And I tried to understand the problem a little bit more. So there's this concept that I learned called design thinking, which is like, you really have to understand the problem that you're trying to address. You really want to empathize with the people who are dealing with this trauma, because ultimately, for me, I had a teacher, I had a space, I had poetry. My guys had nothing. They had guns, they had weed, they had sex, they had money. You know what I mean? That's really what they had. So it just made me empathize and say, I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone ever again. So what could I do to create a space where my guys can feel like they can express themselves, you know, so that the trauma that they're feeling could be expressed? Because I know for me, once I discovered poetry, it was the first time where I could just release my trauma. And I just felt like, boom, like just this weight lifted off my shoulders. So it was thinking about creating a safe space understanding the problems that they were dealing with, and just creating a space where they can talk about it. Because a lot of us, especially as Black men, we're taught to like harbor your feelings. But what I've learned is vulnerability is actually a superpower, like
1000%.
vulnerability takes a lot of courage, authenticity, bravery, just to show up as yourself. And so I just wanted to create a space I could really give these guys a space to just talk, and anybody really. But that's really what helped me. You kind of see, I guess I look at it like this, if it's not for the darkness, we can't appreciate the light that you experience, So I want to say, Corey, like, I love this podcast because you talk about failures, and I love talking about failure because I feel like we don't talk about it enough. We embellish what people are going through, what people have experienced, all the glitz and glamour, but it's all the failure that led to you to be where you are today. So mine is a near-death experience, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
Right. And I love that you have that perspective on that situation. By the way, perspective is one of my favorite words. And there's something that you said that kind of triggered a positive thought, or a memory at least. When you said in that you learned to have empathy for those guys that attacked you, and empathy for your friends that essentially sold you out for a party, even though you just succumbed this act of violence. And it reminded me of a particular situation that I actually went through not too long ago, probably about maybe five years ago. My mom and I had an investment property that we rented out to a young lady. Everything was going fine, and then her boyfriend moved in, and that's when things got interesting. And I remember we'd be like away for like vacation, and we get like calls for like this domestic disturbance, right, happening. And then finally, when we wanted to take possession of the property, I remember showing up to kind of do like some inspection to see what would require renovations and such. And I remember this was the first time I was meeting the boyfriend, but I've also heard about the boyfriend from my realtor, who's one of my best friends. Shout out to Mike Yatt. And he was the one collecting the checks. And he would tell me like, yo, her boyfriend has some real insecurity issues. I get text messages from him about, why are you texting my girl? Well, my guy texts your girl to say, hey, the check is cleared. You know what I mean? He would get that periodically. So I go there to do an inspection of the place. And, Randell, I open up the door. This guy's got his shirt off. Place thinks of weed, whatever. No judgment there, whatever. But he's trying to size me up. I've never met this brother a day in my life. Okay. And so I feel that energy. I know this energy, like similar to you. I have friends that did all sorts of different things. I recognize this energy. And me, naturally, I'm a Leo. I want to match that energy. But I understand this is a business transaction.
Yes, sir.
In real time, I'm coaching myself. I was like, Corey, bring it down. Bring down that male machismo. Bring it down. I was like, hey, man, just one of the property owners just here to do the property inspection. I'm walking through this and that. And then in that moment, I'm actually able to kind of see things from his vantage point. So I'll add a little bit of context. Here is a man who's living with his girlfriend, and they have 2 kids. What I didn't mention was the apartment that we were renting out was a studio.
Okay.
Let that sink in for a little bit.
Okay.
Here's this guy who shows up. He's one of the owners in a nice car. He's in that situation. Right. And he's also a lot younger than me. Like, I would say he was 25. I was probably about 33 at the time. I'm now 39. And so, long story short, when I come to take possession of the keys back, they had some new rule where you got to pay your tenants cash to move out. So I came there with some cash on hand. And I remember as I was about to do the exchange, his girl comes out of a car. And his girl just came out to say hi to me. She came out to let us say, and she goes, hey, Corey, da da da. I'm like, hey, what's up? Nice to see you. And then he goes to her, why'd you say hi like that? And I was like, what is going on here? He's like, yo, get back in the fucking car. Get back in the fucking car. And I'm like, at this point, again, I'm like, do I jump in? Because I don't like the way he's talking to his woman. But at the same point, it's not my relationship, not my business. I'm trying to stay focused on the mission here. So, but I was teetering whether I should be more active in this. So she gets in the call, and then in my mind, I'm like, there's a lot more going on here.
So much.
Because there's 2 kids that live in this household, and that's how he talk. If he's comfortable enough to talk to her in front of me like that,
a stranger,
God knows what else he's saying in the confines of that home. And then finally, so when I give him the money, he gives me the keys. I don't know what came into me, but Randall, I said to him, I was like, yo, bro, are you good? I looked him in the eyes. I'm like, are you good? Because you know what? He was a brother. And something came over to me because I realized very few people will have empathy for us.
For sure.
So I wanted to create a space in real time where I was like, yo, you straight? Like, what's good? Like, what's good? Like, what's going on? Like, he's like, you know, me and my girl, you know, we're going through some issues, you know, family's everything to me and this and that, you know, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I get that. And I was like, yo, I don't know what made me say this, but I'm like, is there anything I could do to ease this situation? And we're pretty much done this transaction at this point. So I don't really need to say anything.
Yeah. Business is done.
Yeah. And he's like, actually, can you delete my girl's number from your phone? I said, oh, word? That's what this is about. So I pull out my iPhone, I pull up her number, and I give my phone to him. I was like, you delete it so you know that it's deleted. So he does that. And I'm like, we good? Like, yeah. He's like, yeah, man, I appreciate that. I respect you and your moms. I love seeing, you know, Black people do this. And I was just like, bro,
damn.
I was like, what? I was mind blown by that because it's funny now, but the energy, I'm gonna tell you, the type of energy that he was giving, he would have taken it up there
for sure
over nothing.
Yeah.
Over nothing. And it made me think about how many of our brothers in our community will do that over practically nothing. And what even saddened me even worse is if I didn't have like the empathy and kind of the street knowledge that I do, it was so intense at moments, I might have called someone else to enter.
Yeah, for sure.
And just think about, what if I was from another community? I definitely would have called something.
Of course.
Because that was the type of energy was on. And it made me think something crazy. I remember Tupac said this a while ago. He's like, man, I can't go back to the hood because they'll rob me. And if I live in this other neighborhood, they're going to be questioning me why I'm here. Therefore, he was saying there was no place for a rich Black man in America. But so I'm not going to that extent, but I'm saying if we have the notion or belief that, you know, other communities are not fan of us, and then when we're amongst each other, we're also being, it's like, where are we safe?
Exactly. That's it. You know, Corey, it's so crazy in that situation because it makes me think about, like, the reason why I empathize is when you said your favorite word is perspective is so important, bro. Like, it's so powerful in the sense where if you even had an off day, let's say, you know what I'm saying? You had no patience and your perspective is, yo, somebody cut you off on the road. I don't know. Somebody nicked your car. You had a bad conversation with somebody on the way there and you're in a different head frame. That whole thing turns into something very different. You know what I'm saying? And I think perspective is so powerful because it really gives you an opportunity. Like, I know people say, put yourself in someone else's shoes, but I say, nah, like, it's not even about putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It's being able to step back and observe somebody, you know what I'm saying, for who they are, where they are in that moment, even though if you don't know them, and then having the empathy enough to say, listen, like, because what I've noticed, Corey, is those people who are so machismo, you know what I'm saying? Those are some of the most sensitive people ever. Those are the people who need the most love, bro. Because what could have happened is maybe him and his mom didn't have a really good relationship. And so his insecurities are coming through his girl. But that empathy that you gave to him might have been a moment for him to realize, yo, you know what? Not every man that has my girl's number is actually trying to be with her. You know what I'm saying? Or like, maybe you know, it's so crazy, bro. Like, I'm trying to like dissect it, but I'm also realizing, like empathy is just really important because you just never know like what someone's going through. Like,
no, you don't. And it's funny. There's like a anecdotal story that was shared years ago, and it goes something like this. There's a guy on a train, on the subway. He's got 3 kids with him, 3 little ones, and they're kind of acting a fool, misbehaving on the train, and he's kind of like out of it. And then the lady next to him's like looking at him like, yo, what kind of parent are you? Like looking at him funny, like judging him.
Yeah.
And he finally, the lady says something to the guy about his kids. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's just their mom just died. And I don't know how to tell them that they don't have a mom anymore. Right. And in that second, in that instant, empathy is created because context. Yeah. Right. So to your point, we don't know homeboy's situation, right? And Malcolm X once said, in order to properly judge a man, you have to understand pretty much the entirety of his background, his history,
100%.
What brought him there, right?
Yes, sir.
But yeah, I love the fact that you brought that up because I could definitely relate to that. Now, you said something similar to what you learned from that experience of being attacked. Now, in your video bio, you mentioned that when you were around the ages of 12 to 13, you got arrested, robbery, assault, failure to comply, what have you. And you said you did it because you were just looking for attention.
Yes, sir.
So with that in mind, when you look at what's happening right now across the GTA, across the greater Toronto area, break-ins, a ton of carjackings. We're down there in New Jersey at this time. I don't remember if you remember the movie New Jersey Drive. They might make one Toronto Drive, right?
It's crazy.
Or maybe they'll do a real Grand Theft Auto after Toronto because
telling you, man,
what's happening. So with all that's going on, the shootings, the break-ins, the carjackings, and for the fact that you work with the youth, what do you think this is all about?
I think a lot of it is trauma. And when I think of from my perspective, right, when I was younger and acting out looking for attention, a lot of it was trauma. It was dealing with abandonment. And so, my parents weren't with me between the age of 1 and 6. So growing up, I just always felt like unworthy of my parents' love. So looking for attention meant like if I got in trouble, they would pay attention because they were always working too. Like I was a latchkey kid. So if I got in trouble, they'd come home and they talk to me, but otherwise it was just, hey, here's your dinner, watch some TV. They're going to go to sleep next day, ain't nobody asking me how my day was type of thing. So I was just looking for attention. So when I reflect on what a lot of other young people are going through, I think a big part of it is maybe and they're young. These kids are young, these kids are really young who are doing this. Cause I met this 14-year-old boy at a school I spoke at for Black History Month. And he told me him and his brothers, that's what they do. 14 years old, carjackings and robberies. Like, yo, I just broke into a house yesterday. It's crazy. So I think a lot of it is like these kids are just dealing with trauma and they don't know how to express it. I think another lens to it though is, they like Saul Williams says, your diet isn't just the food you consume. Your diet is all the things that you consume. Your diet is the music you consume. Your diet is the movies you watch. Your diet is all the different things that you're taking in, you're consuming, and that's now in your body. And so when you desensitize this idea of robbing a car, like don't get me wrong, like Grand Theft Auto was amazing, but I think some people weren't able to really delineate truth, reality versus fantasy. You know what I'm saying? So I think a lot of it is like these young people who are going through so much trauma, who have turned to perhaps video games or movies or just something to just consume and feel like they don't have to think about what they're going through. Because I know a lot of people who just like nothing wrong with video games, but they'll like just lock into video games because they don't want to deal with real life. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so I think a part of it is that, but another sense of it is just young people who are looking for a place to feel heard. Like they just want to feel seen. They just want to feel heard. They want to feel like somebody understands me, because at some point in their life, for many of them, a teacher told them they couldn't amount to something. Their parents said they're a bad kid. So, yo, you tell me I'm bad. All right, I'm bad. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm looking for the world to give me a sense of who I am. But if the world keeps constantly feeding me this idea that I'm bad because of how I'm expressing my trauma, then I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing because at least I'm getting attention. At least my brethrens and I are getting closer because we're doing this thing, this like suspenseful thing, So I don't know what every young person's going through, but I know that dealing and healing the inner child, being given a place to express the trauma that you're dealing with and all the hardships you're going through, and also just being mindful of what you're consuming, what you're taking in. You know what I'm saying? Because I'll give you another quick example. I turned to Common. I was listening to a lot of Common and Lupe Fiasco. Like,
yeah, great guy.
Like, I was just listening to all the positive hip hop. You know what I mean? In high school, where my brethren would listen to all, no disrespect. I love Gucci Man, you know what I'm saying? But there was a time where Gucci just wasn't the Gucci we love now, you know what I mean?
Of course.
And if that's what you're taking in, bro, like that's what you're being desensitized to. So long-winded answer, but I think a lot of us just need healing, man. And it's just sitting with your inner child and, realizing what happened to you doesn't have to define you. Like here's something I'll say. Failure doesn't have to define you. You should let it design you. Like, let your failure prepare you to be who you're destined to be. Because ultimately, failure is inevitable. You're going to experience hardship anyways. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a kind person, if you're an evil person, if you help the old lady cross the street, it doesn't matter. Every one of us is going to experience adversity and challenges. But it really just comes down to how you respond to it, not how you react to it. And knowing that it's inevitable, it's asking yourself, what can you learn from failure? What can you learn from these experiences?
I love that, man. So many gems, so many nuggets you just dropped, man. So many. Especially love that diet isn't just the food we consume, but it's everything that we consume. Bars. Really good. I took that in. And there's a note you said about expressing yourself. A lot of why you feel these kids are doing these random acts, whether it be violence, break-ins, robbery, etc., is they don't have a proper outlet to express themselves. And it reminds me like something my mom did, so I grew up in a single parent household, and I hate actually saying that because it sounds like such the norm for a Black child, right? And I hate kind of falling into the stereotypical tropes that are passed around in our society, because like you said, I don't let that define me.
Absolutely.
Right? So, but when I was a kid, my mother did some things to keep me busy. One, she got me into sports really early on. I probably played every single sport, from softball to track and field to basketball. And then I fell in love with basketball, and I was stuck on that. And I was even in karate for a bit, fell in love with basketball, and basketball kept me out of a ton of trouble. Out of my core 5 friends growing up, I think I'm the only one without a criminal record.
Wow.
By the time we even hit by the time we hit high school, 3 out of my 5 friends had criminal records.
Damn.
Right? A lot of it, I couldn't participate in it because I was on the road. I was in the tournament. I was in the States. I was busy. I was summertime. I was not here as basketball camp. I was in the States. I was here. So I was so busy that I couldn't even be involved in those things. Right. And I think one of the things about sports that I like that you don't really realize in the moment, it's a microcosm of life. You learn how to deal with pressure. You learn how to deal with situations that change on the fly. You learn how to deal with constructive criticism from your coach. You learn what your limits are when you're in practice and you're running suicides and you're just like, you know what I mean? Like, how far can you go? You're in the weight room, stuff like that. And so I owe a lot of my history of not being involved in a lot of things due to violence. Now, I told you that my favorite word was perspective. My second favorite word is accountability. So to me now, when I look at this, I do agree that there's a lack of outlets for kids. I do agree that there's some form of crying out there or need for attention. But the third part I have to ask myself is the accountability piece. Now, and I'll bring this up. So when I used to live in New York, I remember I met a guy that he became like a teacher for inmates. So inmates that were on their way out, so in their last 3 months, 6 months, what have you, he would teach them like math and basic subjects like that. And he was telling me about this one experience where he was teaching a class about guys his age, in his early 20s, mid 20s. And the guy was like, "Oh man, you probably grew up in a really nice neighborhood in the suburbs and blah 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 blah," saying all this. Why you're not in here like us, right? That's what he was alluding to. And he's like, "Oh yeah, what block did you grow up?" Guy inmate was like, "Oh, I grew up on this block." He's like, "Oh, I actually grew up 3 blocks away from you." He said, "One of the only differences between you and me are about maybe 5 to 7 crucial decisions we made between the ages of 13 to 17. And I found that to be an interesting perspective, Because in a day where we live in the information age, there's so much you can do.
Yep.
And I also understand there's so much distraction out there.
Yep.
And so a part of me is like, man, like, I get it. When I was a kid, I was around a lot of that stuff.
Yep.
So I do have empathy for that. But at the same time point, I'm like, at some point, where does the accountability factor come in? So do you ever have this conversation with the kids that you're around?
I do. Maybe not in the same language, but I think really it's like, because perspective, one of the things about perspective is that, you know, good and bad are both subjective. You know, what's good to me and what's good to you are subjective. It's how you define it.
Right.
So what I try to do with the young people I work with is just step back and look at what took place before you put yourself in the situation of, yo, my dad wasn't there. How about you just step back and see yourself living life, or see your childhood, right? Not emotionally connected to what took place and how it affected you, but just seeing it for what it is. You know, can you kind of have like a helicopter view and just see it for what it is? So I talk to them about that. And often, you know, whether it's like a parent that hurt them or life or situations, like I try to just share with them, because people take shit personally. You know what I'm saying? Like they take it so personal, like, yo, this person, this, like, for example, the dude that you're talking about when you went to go, you know what I mean? Get the keys. Like, people take things personal, and then it clouds your judgment. You can't see what is for what it is. You know what I'm saying? So accountability is tough for people who aren't able to step back when they're so consumed with how the trauma made them feel, with how it hurt them, how it damaged them. So I have those conversations, but first what I try to do is just try to remove themselves from the emotional attachment they have from it, and then take accountability for, okay, so this is what happened, right? This is how you saw it. This is how you took it. And these are the actions that you then took. So what your friend said about 13 to 17, those 5 to 7 crucial decisions, then, like, you know, I don't go into it that deeply, but just looking at like what experiences in your life then shaped you to where you are right now, you know, and then you can have that conversation. But honestly, I don't always have that conversation with a lot of young people, because sometimes it's like, it's like word vomit. You know what I mean? They've never had a chance. I was at a school 4 months ago, and this young boy, I was just like, it was okay. So I was talking to all the quote unquote troubled kids in the school. You know what I'm saying? It was like 35 of them, 40 of them. I was asking them, yo, let's talk. You know what I mean? Who wants to talk? One dude opened up. He told me about abusive relationship, growing up, seeing his stepdad beating his mom. And now he's like, I make all these decisions because I want to help my mom, but my mom says don't want to get into it. One day I went to go grab a knife to go stab him while he was punching my mom in the face. But my mom said stop. She stepped in front of me and told me to stop. And so all to say, like, there's these moments in life where you have to be able to pinpoint a situation that really damaged you and really affected you in a way that shaped you to be where you are today. So I just try to create space for kids to talk, you know, because I think once you start to express and then gain the perspective, then I think you're able to be accountable. But it's hard to be accountable when you don't have the perspective of not taking it personal, just seeing the thing for what it is, you know, seeing what happened for what it is. So I commend your friend, because it makes me think about what more I can do, you know, to go into the prison system, because two bad decisions would have led me to where, you know, would have led me to a totally different path, you know? So
1,000. No, you bring up some valid points there, because I think, you know, giving people the space to just talk to someone, level setting. I think, you know, I often, when, you know, because my background's in advertising, when I speak with marketers at different agencies, and I'm like, hey, why are you so big on this particular platform? And the number one thing, even though they all expressed it slightly differently, was relatability. And I think once someone finds you relatable, it breaks down the barriers. They're able to then you know, share some more information about themselves or their situation that will give you some perspective. And then therefore, because their barrier is down, it will allow you to kind of show them a perspective of another way that they could have looked at a particular situation.
Totally.
And, you know, I'm glad that story kind of inspired you to see what you can do more, because I also think about what I can do more. Hence why we've been having some side conversations. And because I'm a big believer in visibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Seeing is believing for pretty much all of us, right? Maybe a 3% of us don't really need to see it like that.
Yes, sir.
And I do want to play my part in helping things turn around, because I know and understand, and I usually just say this towards the end of the conversation, for most people, they don't need to hear something new or see something new. They just need to understand that somebody else has gone through it and they made it through.
Absolutely.
That's enough inspo for them. But one thing I would love to do, I've always talked about this, at least with myself, is I think traveling is one of the best forms of education.
Yes, sir.
And so I've always had this kind of grandiose idea to start a nonprofit where I take maybe like 15 kids from some of the hardest hit neighborhoods, and we just take them like to like South Africa for like 3 weeks.
Yo.
And we put them there, and they work, and they're immersed in the culture. They come back with like, yo, Toronto's like, you know what I mean? Like, and and I guess this is a good segue, because you got to go to India.
Yes, right? Sir.
So I would love to hear like how that trip came about. What was that experience like, and how do you think it changed or informed you?
Honestly, Corey, that trip was because I was dedicating myself to my community. Like, I went to school in Malvern, Mother Teresa. This is where I went to. Yeah. It's a tough school at the time, very rough school, but great ball school. So like you, I was really into ball.
I know.
Yeah, man. I played grade 9, grade 10, and grade 11. It just, I wasn't tall enough, or some of the other guards were better. But ultimately, I just got involved. I got invested in my community, asked myself what I could do. And I remember before I was going on the trip, all to say this is a free trip. Like, it got paid for, you know what I'm saying? Which I'm so grateful for to this day, because I think it was more than 7 G's, you know what I mean, that they put into this trip for me to go to. And I remember going to my guys, my brethren were like, fam, you're going to India, it stinks there. I'm like, bro, you been to India before? Like, I never knew you been to India before. My man said it stinks. I'm like, I never knew India stunk, but okay, you know what I'm saying? But that wasn't going to change my perspective. But it was interesting how, for the people who haven't left they haven't left Toronto, bro. Like, at that time, these guys never left Toronto, but they're telling me what India's like, But India was life-changing. It changed my whole perspective, changed my whole life. I'm not the person I am today. The main thing I learned about India was happiness, brother. Like, Corey, happiness, I learned, is not something that you can attain. It's not something you can buy. It's not something you can have that will ever sustain eternal happiness. How I learned that was that we just went to the Taj Mahal, and we were on this tour going to different temples. We were going to this temple just like 5 minutes away from the Taj Mahal, bro. And there's a man, he has leprosy all over his skin.
Wow.
He is poor. He's wearing like tattered, not even clothes, just rags kind of around of his body. And he's a paraplegic and has no legs. There's a wooden board that he has, and it has 4 wheels on it, and he uses his arms to get around. But he has a tin can that he carries with him to ask for money. So as I'm walking to this temple, I'm in the front. The man is like just holding up the can with the biggest smile on his face. And I remember looking at this guy at 17 thinking, why are you smiling? You have nothing to smile about. You have no legs. You have leprosy all over your skin. You're poor. Why are you smiling? But it was the most genuine smile I've ever seen. And I think in that moment, it didn't sink in that moment. It took some time. But what that man taught me was that happiness can't be attained, bro. Happiness can't be bought. So you get these new pair of shoes, new J's, but they get scuffed. There goes the J's. There goes your happiness. You buy a new car, your car gets into an accident. There goes your happiness. You know what I'm saying? You buy a new phone, it cracks, it crashes. There goes your happiness. So I think for me, your perspective of taking 15 young youth from the hoods, taking them to South Africa, or taking them like somewhere outside of here, what that does for a young person is it opens their minds to so much more. What that did for me is, like, I think this is one of my favorite thing about traveling. My favorite thing about traveling is you get to go and be your authentic self wherever you go. No one knows you. So you don't have to pretend to play the role of what your friends or the people that you live around know you as, because you can just be yourself. You can be who you are, authentic, and no one cares. You know what I'm saying? No one cares about what you've done over there back in Toronto. And so for me, it just gave me a perspective of asking myself, who do I want to be? You know what I mean? Who am I really? Because I saw my real self come out for the first time when I was there. And I realized like who I was deep down was actually a beautiful person. I was really caring, compassionate. And I remember coming back home from India, my mom said, yo, something's different about you. Like, you're not the same, you know? My mom noticed it. But all to say, like, you know, those type of trips provide you a lot of perspective. They give you a lot of opportunity to just be your true self, to show up, to shed take off the mask and just be. And I think, like, Corey, let's talk about it, because I want to see what I can do to help. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good at saving money. And I'm just one of those people where, like, but I like using my money to do good. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about it, 'cause I would love to put something like that together, man. Like,
we'll definitely put a pin on that, man, because I definitely think traveling will be a part of that. And I also think, you know, if you just imagine those 15 kids or whatever the number is, they get to experience that new culture, that new country, and they come back home. I'm thinking they could at least have one friend each that they have that impact on.
Totally.
Same thing like how your mom said, hey, there's something different about you.
Totally.
That transfer of energy can maybe impact the other kids that weren't able to go.
Absolutely.
Now, you and I have a few things in common. And it's besides obviously being Black, for anyone that's kind of really silly and thinking of that, right? One of them being we were both kind of bad kids early on in life. And the second being that we both had teachers who saw something in us that ultimately changed the direction of our lives. So tell us about the teachers who helped to shape your future and how those experiences came about.
From grade 1 to 5, I was a fighter. All I did is I got into a lot of fights, you know?
Likewise.
It's interesting though, because like I get into fights, I get in trouble, my mom would beat me. But what my mom was teaching me was, when you're upset with somebody, you hit them. So then I did that at school, but then I got in trouble. But then when I got in trouble, she did it again. So I just got into a lot of fights. And I had this teacher named Mr. Fry. And I remember meeting him in grade 4 for the first time. And he was my teacher in grade 5. And he would ask me every day, Randell, are you going to be a leader or are you going to be a follower? And I'd say, I'm going to be a leader every day. And he would ask me every day. I mean, like every day, to the point I'm like, yo, sir, like, I get where I get it, sir. Like, I'm going to be a leader. Like, I get it. But he kept asking me over and over again. Then I had this teacher in grade 8, Miss Samartis, who gets my record of a kid who's been arrested 3 times, suspended more than 30 times. And, you know, she could have judged me, but she just asked me, tell me your story. And that was the first time anybody ever cared to listen to this quote unquote troubled kid. I was never a bad kid. I was just misguided and angry. And then I had 2 teachers in high school. Like, I had many teachers in high school. MT had a lot of great teachers and still does, but they just all saw something in me. I can't really explain it. But one teacher particularly was just saying, yo, you're a leader. Anytime we had a leadership conference, come through. And so all these teachers really shaped me. And the final teacher I had in high school, grade 12, his name was Mr. Destiny, ironically. And Mr. Destiny, he advocated for me to be a valedictorian. He lived in Whitby. The man would drive to Scarborough with like food and just come feed me, come bless me. He'd pick me up and we go out to eat. Like, he just saw something in me that I never really understood. But, you know, when I think about all those teachers, it's exactly what I'm doing for a lot of the youth I mentor. I just pour into them selflessly. You know, I pour into them because they did it for me. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, like having one good teacher can change your whole life, bro. And that one good person could do that different, can make that difference.
1000%. I think about myself. So I was a fighter like you. So it's funny how you said that. And I won a lot and I lost a few times.
Yes,
I remember, like, when I talk about I was a fighter, I remember there's these twins. They played hockey too. Tough kids.
Yeah.
And man, they whooped my ass, both of them, right? You know, fair enough. But like, I was a fighter. I had a temper problem. I remember them used to having to get me into programs on how to calm my temper down and take 10 breaths and drink water. I remember them going through these different things for me. I almost got expelled from grade school, elementary school. And I had this one teacher in the 4th grade, grade 4, Miss Trigana, and she was the first one who saw something in me that I can't remember exactly what she did for me, but she gave me a little bit more attention. She spoke to me a little bit differently. And that was the first one. And then in the 5th grade, I had Mr. Jones. Same thing. He basically took up after where Mr. Gunna left, saw something in me, gave me some more attention. And by the time I got to junior high school, I got better. I probably only was suspended like once or twice. And I ended up graduating junior high school athlete of the year and most improved student. And so by the time I got to high school, I was in pretty good shape. I was pretty locked in. If it wasn't sports, and like my thing is, I need to get a scholarship because I can't afford to pay for college.
Same, bro. Same.
That was my game. Yep. So you know what I mean? Like, so I was pretty focused in high school. I wasn't. My friends were doing a lot, but I wasn't really around them because, again, I was heavily involved in basketball. Back then, rep was kind of the thing before AAU style came over.
Yeah.
And so I was always traveling. But to your point, man, teachers matter. All it takes is one to kind of see something in you, change your perspective, hear you out, and just relate to you. And it makes a huge difference. So shout out to all the teachers who'd be listening.
Shout out to all of them.
Y'all matter. Big time.
Big time.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't really go into depth about this. I know we touched on it just a little bit, but I want to talk about Rise, right? You're the founder of Rise, which stands for Reaching Intelligent Souls Everywhere. So you mentioned that a part of that inspiration came from that situation, that incident that happened with you. But I'd love to know for anybody else that's looking to start an organization, whatever that may be, what were some of the steps you had to take? What were some of the hurdles you had to go through to get Rise off the floor?
It's always a loaded question, but I'll try to synthesize it as best as I can. The main thing you have to, when you're starting an organization, usually it's because you want to make a social impact, right? A social impact is predicated on a problem, and you want to really fall in love with the problem. For me, there was a lack of safe spaces in Scarborough where people could express themselves in a positive way. That was my problem, you know? Right. In my hood, there's nowhere I can go to talk to somebody or do it in a creative way using poetry or music or dance, you know? So then I talked to my brethren, I talked to people, I talked to other creative people, and I asked them, like, if we had this space, what would you want it to look like? You know? So one, you want to fall in love with the problem, and you don't want to jump to a solution. You want to talk to the people and empathize. Come back with the word empathize. You want to empathize with the people who are impacted by the problem you're trying to address. Once you sit down, you talk to them, you have a good understanding. You want to really fall in love with the problem enough that you have a very good understanding of the impact it has. And so once I did that and I talked to people, I went around and I talked to a lot of community spaces. I was trying to find a space. It just didn't work out. But honestly, the main thing that I did was sometimes I feel like you have to tell people what you're doing. And I know sometimes, like, I'll say things like, you know, don't tell your big dreams to small-minded people, but to the people who are willing to listen, talk to them, tell them what you're trying to do, you know, because there's something about sharing good ideas with good people. I did that. And it just so happened that the community space was looking for what I was trying to do. So great, boom. Like, it was Scarborough Youth Resource Center, right at Scarborough Town Center. Couldn't have been a better venue, you know, right at Scarborough Town Center. Perfect location. So once we did that, I had to build a team. And I started to ask myself, what is it that I'm good at doing? And then what could I do to bring other people on? So what I did, if you're looking to start an organization, you want to be able to understand every aspect of what you're doing. Because then when you hire people or start a team, you want to be able to give them advice as far as the vision that you're trying to get to. Because what happens sometimes is you bring people on, they have their own vision, whereas you have your own vision. Right. And because these were the people I talked to develop the vision, it was also easier for them to understand what I was trying to do. So once you do empathize and then you do start to think about who you want to, you know, build around you, you want to really come back to the people you started off telling the idea to, and then ask them if this is the best solution. And they did. They said, yo, this should be a really good idea. I've had a lot of hurdles, a lot of challenges, but some of the other challenges were just like, sometimes, you know, when you don't have the vision and people you care about most, it's the people you love the most that won't see your vision, you know? What I've learned is, like, my mom, my dad, you know, some of my best friends at the time, I told them I was trying to do, like, nah, fam, that's not going to work in Scarborough. Nah, that's whack. My mom's like, you know, finish, like, just focus on school. Don't do this. My dad's like, why would you do poetry? Poetry, like, it's not going nowhere. And what you have to realize is when you're looking to do your own thing, it's your vision, not no one else's. People can't see the vision that you have. It was a vision that was given to you. You can't expect other people to see it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I would say there's so much I could say, Corey. I just don't want it to be like a run-on combo because there's so much that goes into starting an organization. But once you fall in love with the problem, once you start working with the people, you have to work with people, not for the people. If you work for the people, you'll never get to the real solution. So you have to work with the people you're looking to develop the solution with. And then you want to build a team of competent people that have skills you don't necessarily have. The final thing I would say is Mother Teresa says, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. You have to dedicate yourself to serving the people you're looking to help. Like what I've learned in this life is if you serve, honestly, the universe, God will conspire to ensure that you are taken care of. I've dedicated my life to just serving people and helping people. The final thing is if it's really a vision that's for you, Denzel says this thing that I've been saying quite a bit lately. He says, say thank you in advance for it's already yours. Bro, I used to speak when I was 8 years old. I used to walk around my house talking to a microphone as if I was talking to thousands of people. Not a real microphone, a fake microphone. So I knew this was something I was supposed to do. So I hosted this event. And when I started doing it, what I realized was like this kid inside of me was happy because I was serving. I wasn't making no money, but I didn't care. I was making an impact. Right. And so I think, like I said, the final thing is you have to say thank you in advance for what's already yours. I knew what I was going to do was going to be big. I knew it. I did. I already knew it. But if you believe in it so much and are invested so much, just know that like it's going to work out for you. You know what I'm saying? And you also, I said last thing, but I lied. You also want to hang around people who are doing similar things to what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? You have to kind of let go of the weeds, and you have to start climbing the tree and seeing the forest, like seeing the full forest for what it is, because other people are doing what you're doing too. So yeah, I'll leave it at that because there's just so much more. But yeah, the challenge is there's a lot that goes into starting an organization, man.
Yeah, I appreciate those gems. Again, so many gems and nuggets. I took a few here. Fall in love with the problem. That's a gem. And then you talk about serving the people that you're going to be working with, like having that mentality, having a servant mentality. I've heard that before. I've heard a speaker, Jim Rohn, say, service to many leads to greatness.
Yes,
I just wrote that down.
Yes, indeed.
And it's funny about the whole vision thing. What comes to mind is I kind of created this analogy where you talked about, be careful who you share, your vision or your dreams or your goals with, right? To small-minded people specifically. And I use this analogy, like you ever see a dog in someone's backyard, he's running around in circles and you can't see, and he's like, from your vantage point, he's like, what's wrong with this dog? He's just running in circles crazy. Like, what's wrong with this dog?
Yes,
but what you can't see is there's like a squirrel or a chipmunk or something in the grass that dog is fixated on, the goal that you can't see. But from your vantage point, it looks crazy because you can't see it.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same thing. Like think about it's like context is probably my third favorite word in the English language. Think about this, right? This just came to me. If someone starts singing music and dancing on the street and then there's no music playing, you're probably thinking that person might be crazy.
You probably are. Yeah.
If there's no concert going on, the artist isn't there, there's no music playing. If a person just starts singing, but the moment you add some headphones, a boombox or whatever, a speaker, you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Exactly.
So
weird though, right?
It's weird, right? We're weird like that. So Randell, as we come to a close in this conversation, I think so many gems were shared here today, man. Very beautiful conversation.
Very.
When you're no longer here, and hopefully that's a long time from now. But when you're no longer here, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to remember you?
I want people to remember me as someone who took all the rocks that life threw my way and turned them into gold. I want to be remembered as someone who learned that his life on this earth was about taking a shovel and digging through all the dirt. And while he dug through all the dirt, he didn't know what he was digging for, what he was trying to find, but he had a treasure chest inside of him. And he kept digging and digging and digging because eventually he knew that he would find the gold. And so that's what I want to be remembered as. Like there's more to it than that, but ultimately it's like you can't allow what life throws your way to be what life is, you know? I also want to be remembered as a really good father, you know, like my dad wasn't the best father. He was physically present and I'm grateful for it, but emotionally super absent. And sometimes it's tough telling it to like my brethren who didn't have their dad there at all type of thing. But it was hard because it's like, bro, you might as well not be here in a way, you know? Like I just want to be a really good dad because I feel like it's easy to look at my dad and say, you know, what he did, I harbor that energy and he never taught me how to be a father. So how can I be a good dad to my own child? But at the same time, because of what he didn't give me, it taught me what I would have wanted and what I do want to give to my daughter. And so when life throws rocks your way, it's trying to teach you something. It's trying to show you that there's something perspective. You said your two favorite words are perspective, context, and the third word, hold on, there's a third one that you said. Accountability. I would swap accountability for optimism. And you and I have two of the same. Like I love context. I love context and everything because it gives you perspective, right? And then you can be accountable. I see what you did there, Corey. Okay. That just hit me now.
That just hit me. I didn't even put all those three together like that. Dang. But yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Dang. But yeah, man, like that's kind of it in a nutshell, you know, like there's something to be said about there's this analogy that I heard, and I love the analogy about the dog, by the way, because that's a great way to talk about perspective, like super great way to talk about perspective. But the final thing is this right here. Like there are many ways to get up the mountain. You know, you can choose to run up the mountain, you can choose to climb the mountain, you can choose to jog the mountain, you can choose to do cartwheels to get up the mountain. There's however you want to get up the mountain, right? There is no wrong way to get up the mountain as long as you get to the top. The only wrong way is when you look at somebody else's journey or plight up there and say that their path is wrong. Like that's the challenge here on this earth, you know? And so I've learned in my life to accept people for who they are and how they are, because I don't know what they're dealing with. I don't know what traumas they got going inside of them. So I've learned to be a real empath in this world. Like I'm a real empath. Like I love people and I care for people deeply because we're all going through something. We just express it differently. And I want to be remembered as someone who just loved, like who just spread light and love, you know, wherever he could, however he could, because it just kind of reminds me of Dude in the Apartment. Like that moment where you just said, I want to be empathetic. Like that's kind of me on a day to day, you know, I see people's aura. I see their energy and I can see when you're off. And I just want to create that safe space. I want to be a safe space for people and say, yo, like, what's going on? Do you want to talk? Like people talk to me all, like people tell me all types of things about things that's happened to them in their life. And so, yeah, that's what I want to be remembered at. Long-winded, but it's such a deep question that I had to take my time to really, no pun intended, but excavate the answer, you know?
I love it, man. And again, so many gems. And what I pulled from that is seek to understand, not judge. You want to be known as a person who did that while he was on this planet. And then your thing about there's multiple different ways to get to the top of the mountain. I remember a facilitator came into where I work. It's kind of like one of those performance coaches. And she asked us a question, how many ways can you add up to the number 10, right? He's like, oh, there's 5 plus 5, there's 6 plus 4, there's 7 plus 3, there's 8 plus 2, there's 9 plus 1. So to your point, you know, I think this is where sometimes social media can be a detriment to some of us. We see someone having success in this specific way, and we think we got to do it that exact way, or even worse, that it's the only way to do it, right? And the fact of the matter is there's multiple ways to get to the top of the mountain or to get to the number 10. But but no, I and your whole dad thing, you want to be a really great dad. So similar to your friends, I didn't have a father in the household. My father's alive, but I have an estranged relationship with him. And I think, if I am able to be so fortunate to be a father, I'd almost overcompensate, because I didn't have that. So I'm like, I want to be that kid. Okay, you say you want to hoop. I'm gonna be up there 6 a.m. with you. We're gonna be in the gym training. I'm gonna be driving the car behind you as I watch you run. That's gonna be me, right? Girl or boy, doesn't matter. You want to play? That's gonna be me. So
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that, man. And the last thing I'll ask you here, Randell, before we go, to the young man or woman that's struggling right now. They're on that wrong path, but they know they could be doing something more positive or be going in a different direction. If you could only give that kid one piece of advice that's listening right now, or that parent of that kid that's in that situation, what advice would you give them?
To the kid, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And things are always working out for you. Even if you don't see them working out for you, things are always working out for you. And how do you take that perspective and use your gifts to make the world a better place? That's what I would say. If it was one thing. And to the mom or to the parents, what I would say to the mom or to the parents is, you do not take your child's misfortunes or failures as your failure. It's how they are climbing up the mountain. It's how they are learning to figure out their steps to get to where they need to get to. And you have to trust what you've done. If you believe you've done a great job or a good job or like a good enough job, you have to trust that what you've done is good enough. And know that they're going to come around. Like, they will come around. It just takes time, and it won't be when you want it, but remain empathetic, stay there with them, encourage them, speak life into them, and don't say things like, you're bad. Like, that stuff never works. But that's what I would say. Like, that's another long-winded question, but if it's just one, that's what I would say to them.
I love that. And I lied to you. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask for like a bar or two from one of your poems. If you could bless my audience, my listeners, with a bar or two from one of your poems.
Which one? Okay.
Catalog is deep, I see.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about which one comes. Okay. This spoken word is a gift, and you can emanate life or death by the mere intention coming out of your lips. We can speak dreams into existence, creating a world united or divided, so you can choose to be the change or remain silent. By size, the tongue is the strongest muscle in our bodies for a reason. It is a tool to connect us to the divine. More than just speaking, it keeps us believing. It is a portal between time and space mixed, the inspiration of ancient hieroglyphs. Our words can build dynasties and mend broken bonds. Our words can create vitality and give us the freedom of redemption songs. Our words can live beyond us like MLK's dream to see us free at last. So be mindful of the words and the intentions that leave the sacredness of your tongue. We are powerful vessels. The Creator etched presence into our lungs, so you have a gift within you. Leave a legacy that will continue. Etch your name in the dendrochronology of history's pages. Do not allow the from and to on your tombstone just to be dated. Let the dash in between reveal the story you told and of the magic that you created.
Amen to that. There you have it, ladies and gents. Randell. So for all my listeners, for my audience that would like to kind of follow you, maybe collaborate with you, maybe have you to come in to speak, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Best way to get in contact with me is info@randelladjei.com. That's my email. You can go to my website, randelladjei.com, and then you can go to contact, and you can get a hold of me right there. Yeah, that's the best way. I mean, I'm on Instagram. I don't check my DMs very much. I'm not very good with DMs, but my email's a lot better.
Awesome. Well, that concludes this episode of 3 Questions with Corey Kareem. And guys, as you know, I like to end each episode by saying this. Sometimes you don't have to learn or see something or hear something new. You just need to know that somebody else has gone through it too. So with that being said, Randell and myself are out. Peace and love. Until the next time.
Clockwise, 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 clockwise.